we go. You ready, guys? All right. Exactly. I wasn't used to that, but all right, so, and since I did overhear that, let's make sure we do that. So potassium, the most dangerous electrolyte imbalance, because we know it leads to nerve communication imbalance, but also arrhythmias. And if you go into arrhythmia and stay in arrhythmia any length of time, what can the heart get a signal to do? Stop. That's called cardiac arrest, isn't it? And it can get a signal to stop. So we know potassium is the one that we really, but we also stressed in A1 and 2 that calcium is also one of those that your body cannot handle variations out of the homeostasis norm. So calcium is also important because if you have too low calcium, what do you know you'll have? Tetany, right? But too high calcium is also going to adversely affect the nervous system. So we've got to keep calcium maintained too. Sodium is going to be a problem when we see it because what is going to end up happening usually? What would be something that if it was you had hypernatremia? It's too much fluid, and then that's going to end up putting your blood pressure is going to do, and is that going to put a burden on the heart as well? And so we know that chloride, we said, sort of plays a role in pH balance, and it does. And usually imbalances follow sodium imbalances. So if you can end up fixing sodium balance, because usually the chloride kind of follows. Yeah, but it does play a role in pH. Make sure y'all know this for the test. I'm telling you right now, you need to know that, right? Where do we find most of our sodium? I just don't know how to do better than I do. But where do we find most of our sodium in our body? Inside of our cells or outside of our cells? Where is most sodium found in the body? Inside, intracellular, or extracellular? I want y'all to think of action potentials for all your cells, because remember, because when we think about our cells, we're mostly our cells, aren't we? And cells have action potentials, which means that they can respond to environmental changes. We said the action potential means that receptors open on the membrane and what pours in?
Sodium pours in.
Sodium pours in.
Sorry, before class I was telling them, I was like, potassium and sodium are kind of like, what did I say? Potassium was the new girlfriend, and sodium was the ex-girlfriend that comes in. She's like, I'm all that chips kind of thing. Yeah, so that. And potassium's like, yes. Potassium's like, I can't deal with her. Let me get out. So
that's true. So the reason sodium pours in is because there's so much of that. I don't know if you did that. Okay. The reasons, and by the way, y'all will want to know this. Sodium is predominantly extracellular. There's a lot of it out there. There's a lot of potassium intracellular. So when sodium poured in, we said that potassium did leave. They poured out. And what happened at the membrane? A shock. Yeah, shock. That's great. You know, those kind of little things they can help you sometimes. So you know, you guys kind of don't give up on questions. Don't give up on questions. Try to think of the conversations we've had, and try to think of those things and make them make sense to you, because they can help you get to the next 2 or 3 steps past that sometimes. You know, even if you've never been introduced to something. All right, great. And that's the way you have to think. The digestive system. The digestive system. I want you all to know that this is all, and I don't even think the press does this, but it's often called in health classes the alimentary canal. So this digestive canal, if you will, the alimentary system. But anyway, we're going to take a look at it from our mouth, our lips, all the way down to the anal sphincter. What's a sphincter? It's a round muscle that is going to control organ volume. So if it relaxes, things can go through or exit. But if it's hold, it can hold substances in. And we talked about the internal external sphincters of the urethra that is helping, that makes us continent, right? That we have are able to control urine flow. Many things can cause incontinence. Many different things can cause that. I think we talked about some of them, didn't we? Okay. So anyway, but sphincters are round muscles that help to control organ volume. And we're going to talk about from our lips all the way to our anal sphincter, this canal, this 30-foot tube, essentially hollow tube, that will be secreting products into it. We will introduce food and liquid into it, right? And at the other 30 feet in of it, you will be getting rid of waste. So you will be getting rid of food that you could not digest. Sometimes you'll be getting rid of toxins this way, and you'll be getting rid of excess water. We said our kidneys are a perfect organ system to get rid of excess water, right? Or to maintain fluid volume by decreasing filtration rates. But our digestive systems will play here too. Can you lose too much fluid volume from the GI tract? Oh, I guarantee you, you can. You can. This is one of the leading causes of death, or GI upsets. And the cause of death ends up being in the few early hours, or if it's continued long enough, through dehydration. And that, again, we said is one of the saddest things you ever hear, because could you support somebody that's dehydrated if you have the means to support them with IVs and whatnot? You could. So it's a really sort of horrible thing. So this is a 30-foot hollow tract that we're going to take a look at, and we're going to see what's going on with it. The idea is we are not autotrophs. We're not autotrophs. We can't just make food out of the CO2 and air. We can't take carbon from our air and change it into those organic molecules we talked about that make up our cells. What were those major categories of organic molecules that make up our cells? Carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. We can't do that. Now, there's some living species that can do that. They can take the carbon, a little carbon dioxide from the air, and they can use light energy. Some of them use chemical energy, but they can actually make their food from what we can't even see, right? Right. So you know what? That's a good trick. That's what I think is so awesome about science, is understanding that we know that these photoautotrophs can do that. And guess what we have to do though? Once they've done that and made their carbs and made their lipids and made their stuff, we're dependent on them because we have to eat them, don't we? And you know that old saying about you are what you eat. Well, you are what you eat. So we are dependent. We are heterotrophs. We have to eat from some other species. Most of our nutrients are going to be coming from plants, aren't they? So what we take in is vital. Just because you take it in doesn't mean you're going to absorb it. It might go through that 30-foot tract unchanged. Don't tell me it hasn't happened to you. That you swallowed something and you saw it later and it looked like nothing had ever happened to it along the path. If that hasn't happened to anybody, you haven't lived. So anyway, I know, but it can happen, can it? So just because you ingest something, ingest means that you have the ability to take it in. It doesn't mean you're going to digest it or absorb it. Let me say this, just because you ingest it and digest it still doesn't mean you're going to be able to absorb it. So what do we need all three happening? Ingest, digest, and absorb, don't we? And we have 30 feet, you know, I'm sort of averaging that, 30 feet to get it done. No. See, I want y'all to think about that because a lot has to happen. I want you to know that and we're going to talk about all of these things that happen. I want you to know that in digestion, there's two types. There's a mechanical and there's a chemical digestion. What would mechanical suggest to you? Chew your food. Chew your food. That's exactly right. Chew your food. Cut it up well before you put it in your mouth, even. So they talk about this mechanical digestion beginning in the mouth. But could you actually suggest that maybe it begins even before then in the preparation of the food, right? Because if somebody is, let's just say, horrible, but somebody's paralyzed, are they going to have assistance with that mechanical breakdown of food before it's put in their mouth? But we're going to go ahead and start with the mouth, okay? But we understand it actually started before that. Mechanical, breaking something up that's big, like a big old apple or a big steak, And you've got to break it down to smaller pieces. Now, in our mouth, we chew. So does it mean that the health of your oral hygiene, your oral health is vital to absorption of nutrients? Absolutely, it's where it begins. Those of you who work in skilled care facilities, you absolutely know that when you see a patient who, for whatever reasons, has lost their appetite or lost the ability to swallow, sometimes that happens because of medication, sometimes that happens because of autoimmune diseases, sometimes it happens because of dementia, and you actually forget how to chew and swallow. But a lot of different reasons can make this happen. But because of it, the nutrition changes, the ingestion changes, nutrition changes, and you can map their decline. Go ahead and start it, because they're not going to last long. You can map it. Which gave me chill bumps just saying, because I've seen it happen too many times. And it's the truth. So oral, it happens. It starts in the mouth. So we can mechanically break down big pieces to smaller. And when you break pieces down to smaller, it gives more surface area for those pieces, right? And the more surface area you have, then you can get the chemicals that are in your saliva and the chemicals that are going to be introduced from your stomach and your small intestines. They can get to the surface to break it down. That's called chemical digestion. That also starts in the mouth. It begins in the mouth. Now, absorption is this idea that we're now being able to take molecules and bring them into our bloodstream and or lymph system and get them into our system. Does it make sense to you that if something is a big old molecule, and this was how I get you to imagine biochemistry and cellular biology, that big old molecules can't get through the lining? Think about a hollow tube, the lining, the inner lining of that 30-foot tube. Big molecules can't go across that, but what can cross? Tiny molecules. Do y'all remember the concept of polymers and monomers? Monomers make up polymers, sure. And polymers are those big molecules like carbohydrates, lipids, proteins. But we said that those are all made of smaller units, aren't they? Aren't they? And that glucose is a monomer of big carbohydrates that we call like oligosaccharides or polysaccharides. Remember that? And so with the building little units that make up these big macro units have to be broken down. That's chemical digestion. And it takes enzymes to do that. What are proteins made of? You all remember this because I hope I drilled it into you. To make proteins, what are the subunits of proteins? Amino acids. So for any protein that we eat, whether it's steak, whether it's, I don't know. I don't even like protein. I'm on carbohydrates. So anyway, what else has protein? Actually, believe it or not, a lot of vegetables have proteins. They really do. And so any foods with proteins, when we eat them though, can we absorb those proteins whole? No, we have to have chemical breakdown of those proteins to their amino acids, subunits, and then we can pull them in. And then we can use those to build our own proteins. Fair enough? So all of this is starting in the mouth, and we understand it. Now for that absorption to happen of those monomers, for absorption to happen, has to happen after all the chemical digestions happen. And by the way, no real significant absorption is happening until the small intestines. The small intestines. There are a few things that can be, very few that can be absorbed, like through the stomach lining. Some medications can, some toxins can, like alcohol, and like I said, some medications. But typically, if they are, can they be harming the stomach lining? So let me say this, I will ask you this question. Where does most chemical and digestion occur and most absorption occur? Small intestines. Have I already told you that?
Literally just the
Okay.
You had mentioned small intestine before.
Okay. Have we already done it? Where am I? Have we started?
No.
Okay. All right, are y'all worried about me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Did Alexis say that? All right. I do have 2 sections in this class, and so I'm trying to think, wait a minute, have we done this? No, okay. So anyway, and defecation is this, we had not started this, had we?
No, we just started today.
All right.
Get close.
We're getting close, I swear it's close. Defecation is getting rid of those extra, waste products, but also what you can't digest. And I think everybody knows what defecation is. If you don't know something, please feel free to stop and let's ask it. So I just went through this processes. Now I hope this next thing would make sense to you. So when you think about bringing food in, you voluntarily choose what you eat. You voluntarily, decide how many times you're going to chew it, and you're thinking about that because you sort of, whether you realize it or not, it's a voluntary kind of action. And you voluntarily choose, okay, now it's time to swallow, right? So these are all voluntary muscle actions that you consciously are deciding to do. But once you swallow your food and it enters into the esophagus, this muscular, empty, hollow tube, once it enters into the esophagus, you don't have to think about it again until you get an urge down here in the anus where you're thinking about, okay, it's time to get rid of that weight. You get this impulse that you need to defecate, right? So you don't have to think about it in between there. And maybe this would make sense to you that something's going to have to happen to push this substance along the way, because that's a long way to go, right? So what this all of these are muscular tubes are going to be doing are coordinated contractions called peristaltic contractions. Peristaltic contractions are coordinated contractions that move substances along in one direction. So that's called peristaltic contractions, moving the substances along in one direction. You would want to know that. There's also mass sort of segmentation movements that happen. So you guys sometimes hear your stomach growling, don't you? And you had nothing in there that you put in there. Or you will sometimes hear bowel sounds. You can certainly hear them with a stethoscope, can't you? Through auscultation, you can hear that. Those are things that that means that it's almost like churning. And you always want to hear that happening, because we always have something in that system, even if we haven't eaten in a long time, because these organs are all secreting products. Let me say this, we just saw that a person typically takes in about 2.5 liters, or you saw that, intake for food and liquids, right? But what happens is in your GI tract, that 30-foot tract in a day, you usually have about 9 liters, so another 7.5 or so liters that these organs are contributing to secretions. Because 30 feet is a long way to send something. If you don't have a good slip and slide, you're stuck. Is that right? Literally. So you make about 1.5 liters of saliva a day. You make about 1 liter plus, and your stomach is making about 1 liter plus of secretions. Your small intestines are secreting. Your pancreas is secreting. Your liver is secreting about 7.5 liters of fluid. And those secretions have great enzymes in them for chemical digestion. And they have great antimicrobial properties, and they have all kinds of functions. But the major function is to move what along? Food, exactly. By the way, when you eat something, you don't call it food anymore when it's in your mouth. What do you call it? Y'all would want to know this terminology. A bolus. That's exactly right. When it gets to the stomach, it's no longer called a bolus, it's called a chyme. C-H-Y-M-E. And then as it enters into the intestines, this is when we're referring to, especially in the colon, we're referring to these secretions and nutrients and food particles as species. Is that right? Okay. Colon. Yeah, the colon. So guys, I want you to kind of know that it's sort of like when we talked about the urinary tract and the system. Where the first filtrate happened, that's not called urine yet, is it? No. It's only referred to as urine when you're not reclaiming any good stuff back, and it's then going to exit the body. That's the same thing that we think of with feces, really. is that it's only called that when you know that pretty much the process has happened and the rest is not going to be absorbable. So now we call it that. All right, so anyway, we're sort of thinking about this whole system. So where do you think we should begin to start? Yeah. Except there's a couple of slides. I'm sorry, I'm going to show you two. So we said this has to be a muscular system, doesn't it? It has to be a muscular system, and because obviously these peristaltic contractions are what really are moving things in that one direction along the path, and hopefully along that path you're going to get plenty of mechanical and chemical digestion, so that the little monomers that are in the soup mix, and we can really kind of think of it as a soup mix that's moving through, will have a chance to hit the inner lining of our small intestines especially and be absorbed into our system. That's what we need. We don't want it. We don't want nutrients entering in our mouth and coming out unchanged and unaffected and unabsorbed at the other end. But this should also be letting you know this. Could people actually be taking in, ingesting nutritious food, but not absorbing it? Yeah, and we're going to see what it takes along the way to have this happening. I don't have this on a lab, and I don't have this. I don't talk about this too much, but again, this is one of those things that should be intuitive. You understand that every organ system, where every organ of the system that we're about to talk about has to have blood supply. Do you understand that? And it has to have venous return. So there's going to have to be arterial, capillary beds that have good oxygen, and then also ventral and venous return. But also in these organ systems, there's going to have to be some stability. And so there's going to be structures in place so that your intestines won't twist. If they twist, what can happen? Blockages, impactions. If they do that, could you strangle tissue and it become gangrenous? It can become gangrenous. So please keep in mind that, we're going to see our little GI tract is going to look something like this. But we understand there are a lot of supportive structures here. There's blood supply, there's lymphatic vessels, there's all of these, there's nerve supply. There has to be, because the muscles have to know when to do this peristaltic contraction, right? So there's a lot more to it than just the basic organs of the system. I have seen patients who had gangrenous intestines that had to be removed. Feet of gangrenous intestines. Was that a life-threatening event? Yeah, absolutely, a life-threatening event. I've seen patients who are impacted. Has anybody ever had help with impaction? I've seen patients who are impacted, and all I can think of is, I want to remind people, I did this with someone who posted yesterday, they're a patient, but, they're a person. So don't forget patients are people. And what a thing to help with, because I've seen patients in so much pain because of impaction, and the relief that happens. And if impaction goes on too long, is it life-threatening? It absolutely is. So we're going to see what's normal. But anyway, there is something that's referred to as this mesentery and mesocolon. So what you're looking at with the mesocolon is the sheath, if you will, of this vascular sheath and support system. And then you see also this mesentery, and you have this apron here that looks, this is called the greater omentum. This, the integrity of this needs to be maintained. And obviously the blood supply. So these are really, I don't want to say accessory structures to the GI tract, but they are, so just keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and start with the mouth, right? We said the uvula is this, some people call that a dangler. This is actually going to prevent food and water from going up into the nasopharynx. We've all had food and water go up into the nasopharynx, and it's a horrible feeling, isn't it? So we don't want that to happen, and this is really the function of this uvula. We said the tongue is amazing. It's got quite a few different tissues related to it, but we think of it as a muscle, an incredibly strong muscle, by the way, that can manipulate food and help us with this act of chewing. And also, certainly the tongue is used for speech, isn't it? But manipulation of food so that that mechanical breakdown of food can actually happen. Also, sensory organ in that it has our 5 different taste buds. Is that right? What were those 5 different taste buds that are all, they're all kind of interspersed throughout, but some really kind of some of them concentrated. On the tip we have sweet. On the sides, mostly salty, sour and bitter toward the back, and then one that we call umami. That I still don't know exactly what that means, but anyway, beefy, meaty, MSG, whatever. But there's 5 different taste buds. So this is this tongue is a sensory organ. The tongue is a muscle. The tongue is actually got cranial nerves that are involved in blood pressure. So we understand that there are a lot of things going on with our tongue. It needs to function. I do want you all to know the term frenulum. A lingual is referring to the tongue, but this lingual frenulum is what is holding the base of the tongue to the mandible, to the lower jaw. So it's kind of holding that. Some people, if it's too close to the tip, they're called what? Tongue tie. Have you all ever heard of that? Yeah. And so it has to be clipped sometimes. This superior labial frenulum can also be too far down. And the problem that can happen with these frenulums sometimes, depending on how close they are to the tip or whatever, it can keep an infant from suckling. It can keep an infant from latching on, and if the upper lip or whatever, and it can keep an infant from suckling like they should. So if that happens, then sometimes they just get clipped, right? So it's all that. That's a simple thing. All right. So these are just some of the anatomy. I don't actually have, I'll tell you now, I don't actually have anything for you to label that's on this. So, but we're interested in it, aren't we? So hopefully we're interested in it. And we do understand that oral hygiene leads to oral health. And oral health is our first thing for nutrition. We are what we eat. We must take in the nutrients we need to be healthy, to survive. So it starts right here. And for all of this to happen, then we have to have enough saliva. And I do want you all to know, we'll know what the 3 salivary glands are. We know that tonsils play a role in our immunity, our protection, don't they? Tonsils have a good function, but what can happen if people have recurring tonsillitis and even tonsillar abscesses, which are life-threatening, is that we know tonsils sometimes can end up seeding infections, but our tonsils are an important part of immunity as long as they're working like they should. So we're looking at all this. Now, I have a couple of people who might be going into dentistry or dental profession. And so at this time, those people should definitely learn all of the names of the teeth. Most children have 20 teeth that we call baby teeth, don't we? And then as adults, most of us have 32. There's an inheritance thing related to this. Some people don't have canines. It's just that they don't inherit canines. Some are missing like premolars. This is inheritance. But this is the normal. This is what most people end up having. Baby teeth aren't that important, are they? Do y'all see breaking up together? You're welcome. Anyway, just recently on that, they had a woman have a baby, and the baby had like 4 teeth ever. You know, and that actually has happened where babies are born with teeth that have already broken through. It doesn't happen often, but anyway, you know, usually by 2 babies are going to have these teeth in, and depending on a lot of factors, again, inheritance factors, but also nutrition factors and gestational health. Babies typically won't break teeth until 4 to 8, 9 months, 10 months even. They'll start breaking teeth. Teeth will start breaking through. Baby teeth are vital. The health of baby teeth are vital to the beginning of that child. Vital. baby teeth do matter. Baby teeth do count, and they do need to be taken care of. So this is kind of a static picture because obviously it was a child that died, right? And so everything stopped at this point. But the reason it's in your textbook, and the reason I included it up here for the PowerPoint is just to let you know. You see it, you know, when you look at a little child, think about their mandible and maxillary bones. They're full of teeth. Okay. I mean, they're just full of teeth. Kind of crazy. And those baby teeth serve so many functions for the nutrition of the toddler and young child, but also they're holding the place as those permanent teeth are forming in the bones. And this is another one of the very vital roles of this. So it's important that babies keep their teeth as long as possible. And they're holding those positions for these permanent teeth that will end up coming in. Now, again, anybody thinking about dentistry should actually know the particular names of these teeth and whatever, and how they're numbered, because that's going to be your job. What we know about, and I think I've already talked to y'all about this before, is when we talked about gum-phosis. Gum-phosis is a special kind of joint that holds the tooth to the bone. And this is the bone. You see that this is the bone, right? And there are going to be little periodontal ligaments that hold the tooth to the bone. And it's going to be important that health of the gums, the gingiva, which are gums, that the health of the gums be maintained, because when there's inflammation of the gingiva, the gums, it means there's swelling here. And swelling can pull the gum kind of away from the tooth, which can then allow for plaque formation, which is like cities of bacteria. I mean, that is what plaque is. It's like cities of bacteria. So it's hardened substance that causes biofilm that's really hard, even with brushing and even with certain chemicals. It's really hard to treat biofilms because you can't get into that. So, you know, it's going to take actually mechanical removal of that. But we know that even in this country, half of all 20-year-olds have a periodontal disease already happening. And this is where most tooth loss actually occurs, is because of periodontal disease. Now, there's also something called cavities, which we all know about. Cavities are going to be accurately referred to as dental caries, C-A-R-I-E-S. Dental caries is what we call cavities. Dental caries are usually caused from a bacterium called Streptococcus mutans, M-U-T-A-N-S. Streptococcus is the genus, mutans is the species. And we all have this bacteria, most of us have this at some time, even if it's transient, in our mouths. We have a lot of microbes in our mouths, don't we? Most of those microorganisms are keeping us kind of healthy because they're protecting us from potential pathogens. But Streptococcus mutans is what causes dental caries, and it loves sugar. So what do they tell you should really limit in your diet? Sugar, sweets, and actually, if you do have sweets, then you should certainly be careful or even more vigilant about oral hygiene. Any questions for me? All right, so cavities obviously could end up leading to tooth loss if they're not taken care of. But true tooth loss we think about with gingivitis leading to periodontal disease, which is going to be loss of the joint, integrity of the joint. Mastication means chewing. Mastication means chewing, and we have these muscles, the masseter. Y'all remember the masseter muscles? You had to label it, didn't you? Masseter, and then underneath the masseters, you had the buccinator, right? Buccal cavity means what? Oral cavity, doesn't it? So mastication, buccal, right? And then you have these pterygoids. So you have these muscles that are going to help with that. And you need those muscles functioning and whatnot. So and we need our teeth. And when we think about teeth, do all teeth look alike? I mean, that's a silly question. They don't, do them. So we have teeth for grinding, don't we? We have teeth for tearing. So we have teeth that have evolved because of our diets and what we need. And actually, you know, how many vegetarians do I have in here? Really? There's not a single, there's not a vegetarian in here. Okay.
Meat is good.
So, no, actually, though, we really have evolved to eaters too. So we've evolved with both, right? And our teeth show it. Our teeth prove that we kind of have. We've been nomadic and we've relied on both. Now, I'm not saying that people can't get all the nutrients they need from a plant-based diet. You can, but you have to really be vigilant to get everything that you need from that. And you can do that. But anyway, just looking at the teeth. I wish I could picture a dog's mouth, right? Right. I have a sister-in-law who, she's very much vegetarian and runs marathons. And her dog had to go on the same food regimen that she went on. And I was like, what on earth? Why? I was like, you know, your dog wants some meat. Look at its mouth. Look at its teeth. Its teeth will tell you it wants some meat. So anyway, I'll so mastication. You guys, what is phagia? If I told you that something had the ability to phagocytize, what do we say that meant? Eat, right? So what would dysphagia mean? Difficulty eating, right? So difficulty eating, and sometimes chewing is part of that and whatnot. Now here, this is a great picture to look at these salivary glands. The salivary glands, you've got the parotid. Everybody say parotid to me. Parotid, which is different than parotid. But anyway, parotid glands. And if you took your two fingers here and put like that, that's how big they are. These salivary glands, if we dissected, you would see they're really huge. Actually, on rats today, if you want to dissect their little jaws, you could do that. And you'll see these glands. I don't usually, you don't have to, but you could. Anyway, and then sublingual means what? Below the left. And submandibular would mean what? Below the mandible. The names tell you where they are. And you produce about 1.5 liters saliva a day. That's a significant amount, isn't it? So these glands are releasing saliva, and it's going to be, you don't have to have food in your mouth to release saliva. You can just think about something really good, right? Or you could smell something and you're going to start salivating. So we understand that this is a great way that we use. Gosh, it seemed like I didn't need it. I had another slide. But anyway, I do want you to know that the saliva is not just helping things slip and slide down your throat and moving things along. If you stop producing enough saliva, it might be so slowly that that's happening that you don't realize that your oral hygiene has changed. You have to have enough saliva to keep those microbes kind of in check because there's antimicrobial agents in saliva. There's antibodies in saliva. There's enzymes that already start the chemical breakdown of amylose. Amylose would be a carbohydrate, wouldn't it? So you have amylase, you have lipase. If something ends in ASE, what is it? If it ends in ASE, it's an enzyme that acts on that without using the word. So amylase acts on amylose, breaking it down. Lipase acts on what to break down? Lipids, which are fats. So you have all these enzymes in saliva. You have mucus. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's a good thing because it helps with the slip and slide, doesn't it? So what happens as we age, sometimes we don't produce as much saliva. Can that affect our oral hygiene, our oral health? Can it affect how you swallow food? Can it mean that sometimes you're not even noticing, but you're not eating the same kinds of food because you know they can maybe cause you to choke, right? It's happening to me right now. Do you all feel sorry for me? Okay, whatever. Like I said, don't age much, have a sense of humor. But you know, that actually can happen. All of that can happen. Medications, can they dry your mouth out? Yeah, medications can do that. And, you know, a lot of things can end up affecting this, so please know that. And our saliva is important. Our throat, our pharynx means throat, doesn't it? Y'all know this means throat. And We have different regions of it. We have the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, the laryngopharynx. But this pharynx is our throat region, and again, this has to be healthy. If you have pharyngitis, are you really wanting to eat that steak or that popcorn or anything? No. So we understand that. The esophagus is this tube, this muscular tube that is going to carry food from our mouth to our stomachs. This is a barium swallow that you're actually seeing on a person that had an x-ray done, where you're seeing these peristaltic contractions, where you have contraction here, and this signal of this muscle has gotten a signal to relax. And then guess what's going to happen here? Contraction, and this area relaxes to accept it. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, moving on along. Now, so the esophagus takes the bolus to the stomach, and there is a sphincter here. It's called the esophageal sphincter that is going to relax and allow food and liquid to enter into the stomach. Fair enough? Y'all liking that? I don't know what it said. The esophageal sphincter here has to relax, and it gets a signal to, as soon as you voluntarily swallow liquid and or food, the esophageal sphincter is getting a signal to relax. Some people's messages are off, and so they don't get the signal, and guess what would happen? It can back in the esophagus, and it can be really uncomfortable for people, right? And actually, the esophagus can stretch out, and that's not a good thing either, is it? So sometimes they go down here and they take a bulb and they blow it up and kind of stretch out that sphincter. But the problem there becomes, even when you're not eating, what can happen? Yeah, you can have reflux. And so I told you all about GERD, hadn't I? Gastroesophageal reflux disease / disorder. Y'all know about GERD. If you didn't write it down, you should know that means that gastric, if you ever hear gastric, it's referring to the stomach. So gastric juices can come back up, and things shouldn't go backwards. So it shouldn't happen. So swallowing, the term for swallowing is deglutition. We'll take a break in a minute, guys, okay? But y'all okay? 10 more minutes? Move in. So deglutition means swallowing, and again, it takes a lot of coordination that's happening for the swallowing to actually occur. And you can see some of these x-rays with these barium swallows that you're able to see that. By the way, if somebody's having a barium swallow, I want you to know that if they've had that, they have to be able to get rid of that barium within a certain period of time, because barium will end up turning into cement after like 24 hours. So it becomes kind of a catch to this, because you're not getting a barium swallow unless they think you have a GI problem. And the GI problem might be that you have paresis. Does anybody know what paresis means? What does that mean? Gastric paresis, or it doesn't have to be gastric.
Oh, it doesn't work.
It's not working, so it's not emptying. It's not emptying.
My daughter got a barium swallow at 3 days old.
3 days? They were looking for, and I'll show you what they're looking for, pyloric stenosis.
Well, she was
throwing up
through her nose.
Yeah, so she's throwing up a lot. And babies, it's absolutely natural for them to throw up. And it looks like they threw up more than you fed them. But why does it look like that? Because all of that mixed with what? Saliva and gastric juices, which are significant amounts, isn't it? So it can look like babies just threw up everything you just gave them, but usually they're not. And as long as they're peeing and defecating, then you know things are getting through, because they wouldn't be otherwise. But some babies have what's called pyloric stenosis, which is can be a life-threatening thing, meaning that really nothing's getting through, and there's violent, regurgitation of this. So they'll go in with babies and will cut the pyloric sphincter and open and let it relax some, because babies' pyloric sphincters are immature. They're not getting the right signaling yet. So what the signaling should happen is the esophageal sphincter opens, milk or food go in here, the stomach will act as a churn and will secrete, and all of the stuff the stomach needs to do in the hours that it's there happens. And then the pyloric sphincter relaxes, the stomach contracts and dumps is kind of a bad word, but dumps things into the first part of the small intestines. But babies have immature coordination. And so this is why they throw up so much and spit up And this is why you also want to be burping though, because you don't want to contribute to the problem, right? And babies, we'll talk. I think maybe we already did talk about that epiglottis, how babies can actually breathe and eat at the same time. But because they're doing that, are they also getting some air in the stomach? They really are. And so you burp them well so that this happens and the stomach doesn't get too much of a stimulus for this. Anyway, that makes sense? All right, so this is the stomach, guys. The esophagus moves through. This is the diaphragm, and today is the first thing you're going to dissect when you open up the cavity, the thoracic and the abdominal cavity on the little rats. You're going to have to be careful here at the end of the sternum because this is where the diaphragm is attached. So this really thin muscle that separates the thoracic from the abdominal cavity is the diaphragm. The diaphragm, if we looked at it from an inferior aspect, the esophagus is coming through there, right? And this is the esophagus. If the stomach ever bulges up through the diaphragm, do you know what that's called? No. It's called a hiatal hernia. It's a hiatal hernia where the stomach that takes that from that opening gets pushed up into the thoracic area. That should just like not happen, okay? But people who do have that happening are sometimes in a lot of pain. This area of the stomach, and please realize it's just that this is what this area of the stomach is called the cardiac region, because what is sitting right here on top of this area? The what? The heart. So this is why when this area pushes back up into this, what do people come in thinking they're having? Sometimes a heart attack. And what do you rule out first? A heart attack. But if you've ruled it out and then you do some scans, you can sometimes see, oh no, this is a hiatal hernia. And they can repair that. They can pull the stomach back through and do a little tie off to try to keep it from slipping back up. And sometimes they just watch it or they tell you to change your diet. It's probably exacerbating the symptoms of it, but whatever. So here's the stomach. It's a J-shaped churn organ, lots of muscles. Look at all these muscles because it is a churn. And chyme needs to stay here for a certain period of time. And it can because there's a sphincter here and there's a sphincter here and they're closed once chyme is there. And it's going to be churned. There's going to be more secretions added to the mix, and it's going to have to stay there. We're going to talk about what is being secreted. If you overfill your stomach, there is an area that can take that, and it's called the fundus of the stomach, cardiac region, the body of the stomach, and this last region of the stomach is called the pylorus or the pyloric region, and you would want to know this. You would want to know every region of the stomach. You will have to label them. Okay, so you will hear a patient's report that they had a pyloric ulcer, and will you know where it is? Yeah, or you will hear that the fundus is whatever, might be something, whatever. Yeah.
So it's the fundus, then what?
The fundus is this if you think about kind of like this overfill area that can happen. This is the cardiac region where it first enters into the stomach. This is the body of the stomach, and you see other labeling, but that's all I want to do. And this whole last region is called the pylorus or the pyloric region, and this is where you'll find the sphincter that is going to allow, once it relaxes, allow chyme to enter into the first part of the small intestines. Do I have any questions about that?
So what we'll label is
You'll label the esophagus,
okay,
the cardiac region of the stomach, and that's the way you'll say it. Because if you say cardiac, I'm going to think of heart, right? It's the cardiac region of the stomach, the fundus, the body of the stomach, and the pyloric region of the stomach, or pylorus. Good? Everybody good? It is the pyloric sphincter that often infants have issues with. And if you have pyloric stenosis, what does the word stenosis mean? I don't care where you use it. What does the word stenosis mean? What does it mean, Nicole? It is. It's narrowing. Narrowing. So it's a narrowing. Narrowing. What? It's closing off. Narrowing. Narrowing. Okay. All right. So that's exactly right. Now, I want to do one other thing. Look, this is a cadaver stomach here, and I'm wondering on this cadaver, like, what the heck was this? The stomach, when your stomach is empty, it, of course, it has the ability to descend, doesn't it? When it's full. But when it's empty, it's going to have these folds. These are referred to as rugae. You guys saw that word. Where'd you see that? Exactly. When the bladder's empty, it has these, and that's natural to have those folds. You would expect to see those, and it's rugae. That's exactly right. I want you to know about the cells. I'm going to ask you on the test, excuse me. I'm going to ask you what cells secrete intrinsic factor. What cells secrete hydrochloric acid? And what are you going to say? It's the parietal cells. The parietal cells of the stomach secrete hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor. Y'all already knew intrinsic factor was from the stomach because of our study of hematology. You'll get to forget what we learned before. You got to keep all that kind of going, revisiting it so that you can recall it. Intrinsic factor was needed for what? What is it needed for? Digestion, absorption of what? Vitamin B12. If you don't have intrinsic factor, I don't care how much B12 you're taking in, will you absorb it? No. So if your stomach is not producing intrinsic factor, you're going to be B12 deficient. What is one thing we know that B12 is needed to make? It's part of B12 and folic acid. It's part of there together. It is needed for red blood cell production. So if you don't have intrinsic factor, you will be deficient in B12s, and you will be anemic because you do not make red blood cells. You can't. There are the building blocks for it. Are you good with this? We had this in hematology. There should be review. Okay. Hydrochloric acid, why in the world do we want to go from our mouth, which is about a 7 pH neutral, esophagus, which is about a 7 pH, and now all this has gotten put into the stomach? Why do we want an acid pH? It goes from 7 to 1. This is hydrochloric acid. Goes from 7 to 1. Why would we want that? This is going to destroy bacteria. These are the functions of hydrochloric acid. Does it destroy all bacteria? Does it make everything sterile? No, we don't even want it to, do we? But we want to take the numbers way down. So it's going to control bacteria numbers. It's going to activate some of those enzymes that are going to be needed for chemical digestion. Some of the enzymes that we make for chemical digestion, they work best at a acid pH, especially the ones that break down fats. It is going to take the iron-rich food that you eat. I know everybody eats spinach every day and liver every day. It's going to take that iron and it's going to reduce it to an absorbable form of iron. Because the iron you take in your food cannot be absorbed in our system. You might eat spinach for every meal and still be iron deficient because you don't have enough what? Acid from the stomach. You get it? So we know it does that. And it also helps break down those tough things like collagen and waxy structures of plants. It can help break down those really tough structures. So it's got a lot of functions, doesn't it? Hydrochloric acid. So that's why most meals for adults, not kids, but most meals are going to stay in your stomach for a few hours. And they're going to be churned there. They're going to be, all those nutrients are going to be mixed up. And so that has a good function. Now, I want you to know that's parietal cells. Then I want you to know the chief cells. Now, chief cells, when you're an infant, only when you're an infant, produce chymosin and lipase. What did I tell you this enzyme would probably break down? Lipids, fats. That's exactly right. And chymosin is a clotting kind of factor. Have you ever fed a baby and honestly they just swallowed, but when they threw back up, it looked like cottage cheese, and you think, what happened to the middle? You know, it looks like cottage, right? We all done that? Yeah. Well, that's because of chymosin working. And it's actually preparing that the milk fats to be broken down by this lipase. So that means that your stomach's, the baby's stomach is producing what it needs to get this. Because what did we say breast milk is mostly? It's mostly fat. Why is fat so important for neonate? The right fat, mother's fat. Why? Because of myelinization of the nervous system. Remember the myelin sheathing that's happening at tremendous paces of the baby's nervous system? Right. So now, after 1 or 2, especially about 2, these chief cells change. And they change and start producing pepsinogen. And pepsinogen, or pepsins if you want to, abbreviated pepsins, these are going to break down. What do y'all know peptide bonds are between? Peptide bonds hold what together?
Amino acids.
Amino acids. So if peptide bonds are holding amino acids together, you know that this molecule is a protein. So after infancy, pepsins are going to help to break down proteins. Babies don't have the ability to break down proteins until after infancy. So people who are feeding their babies cereals or other foods before they should, those babies cannot digest them. They're going through their stomach into their small intestines, and some of them moving straight across to their little porous intestinal lines into the bloodstreams, causing food allergies, and later, potentially, autoimmune diseases. We know a lot more about nutrition and absorption than we used to. Pay attention to that education that's coming out about how to feed your babies, what to feed them when. Don't jump ahead thinking because your grandma said they'll sleep better through the night as you feed them. They're in a coma. Their stomachs are in a coma. Don't do that. You know, and babies aren't supposed to sleep through the night, by the way, because they can't maintain their glucose homeostasis. They're not supposed to sleep through the night. So don't do that, because we know a lot more about it. And please try to do that. You know, my nurse practitioners, nurses, y'all are the practitioners. It's your job for that education component of this to let people know, because people want to do right by their kids. They just don't know, you know, and everybody's giving them advice. You know, whatever. All right, so we're going to know these cells. Mucus. Is mucus going to still be a good thing? Is mucus a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing. We just need it up to a point, you know, more than that, right? But it's a good thing. So mucus, regenerative cells that are regenerating all the time. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back. What?
It's up.
Oh, it's just one. Okay. Oh. All right, so we said these secretions from the stomach, and you have these slides that tell you all the functions of hydrochloric acid on the parietal cells. You know, slides that also tell you about the intrinsic factor, remind you of that, and then what the chief cells are doing with the, you know, the lipase and chymosins and also pepsinogen.
About the chymosin, that was you said it's like a clotting.
It actually acts like it actually preps the fats to be broken down, so that if you want to think about it as doing something like that, then that's kind of really what it's doing. And so we get that these are all going to be important functions of stomach secretions, gastric secretions, which have the lowest pH of really any other thing in the body. This is why when you vomit, it's not a good, well, it's not a good feeling for a lot of good reasons, but it burns, doesn't it? So you have got to, as soon as you can, you certainly got to get that out of your mouth, because it's so acidic, your gastric secretions, that it can eat through the enamel on your teeth. And the enamel in your body, on your teeth, are is the strongest substance in the body, way stronger than your bones. So this is serious stuff, this acid, right? But vomiting is protective. It's protective because it helps you to expel potential poisons and toxins. So, you know, you want to be able to vomit. You also need to vomit if there's a viral or bacterial type cause of inflammation of the stomach or whatnot, because you need to get rid of it. So people who are taking anti-emetic drugs or, you know, things to slow colons down when they have diarrhea or vomiting can sometimes be harming themselves. Why? because your body's trying to get rid of the toxin, but you're not allowing it to. You get that? So you should know what you're doing. Of course, we've made all of them over the counter, you know, so people can self-treat. But honestly, people sometimes need to not be doing those kind of things. They actually do need, their body's trying to get rid of something. So anyway, but vomiting's very, can be very protective, and is. Some people have, this is all part of the emetic centers in the medulla, but some people have a really sensitive emetic center and vomit like just at the thought of things. Y'all know people who gag and vomit over nothing? Brett? Okay. Yeah, no, so seriously, some people do, and other people have very, very low kind of centers and just never are gonna, you know, vomit on a dime type thing. But actually, it is a protective mechanism, and we need to understand that. Now, usually what you're vomiting are stomach contents, and the pyloric sphincter's closed, and you're vomiting that. If this becomes so, you know, whatever, exaggerated, I guess, you can actually end up vomiting from the intestines. And people have actually vomited even feces. People have been great. In fact, and some of my nurses are shaking their heads like, yeah, you've seen that happen. That can happen, be warned in case you haven't seen that. Now, I want you all to know that if you think about, if everybody thinks about what their teeth looks like, I have no problem to make funny faces up here, but if you think about what the inside of your cheeks look like, this is the way really almost that entire 30-foot tract should look. It should be like healthy looking tissue, very vascular tissue, certainly wet, because it's all secreting, isn't it? So this is what it should look like, but you can have ulcers. And so probably all of us at some time or another had labial ulcers, right? You get those little white, what do people call them, lab lumps? Do people call them that still? So anyway, but, and you can have them in your tongue, under your tongue, and they hurt, don't they? The problem, though, is when they're in the stomach, is that sometimes in the stomach, they can start to bleed. And these bleeding ulcers in the stomach, would that be affecting your hematocrit? Would that be potentially even you're losing enough blood that it's affecting your potential of your life, right? People can die from bleeding ulcers. Another problem is that this tissue is constantly staying irritated and sore, and what we know is that this can lead to stomach cancer. So I want you all to know that the bacterium, this is in a clinical insight, I think, so I'm not going to spell it, you'll get it, you can look at it. The bacterium that causes stomach ulcers, gastric ulcers, is called Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori. You'll hear about it as H. pylori, because a lot of times that's the way we say bacteria's names. Is that a clinical insight there? Yes. So please be, y'all are knowing that you got to be reading your clinical insights, don't you? So the coolest thing about this discovery, and you need to hear this, does anybody know anybody who's died of stomach cancer? And the reason I say died of stomach cancer is people don't get along with it. The prognosis is bad. Now, early detection is important. But here's what we know. Stomach cancer almost all is caused from stomach ulcers. Where the ulcerative lesion was there for long periods of time, it causes mutational changes in the tissues that lead to cancer. So let me tell you the coolest thing about knowing what causes stomach ulcers. It's a bacterium. We have antibiotics, we can treat it. And if we can treat somebody with stomach ulcers, can we prevent them from developing stomach cancer? Yes. Let me say this, and please hear me and don't misquote me. Just because you know somebody with stomach ulcers, it does not mean they're going to develop stomach cancer. A few of them might. Do you get what I mean? A few of them will, actually. But not everybody. Stomach ulcers are very common, but what we know is that if untreated, they may lead to stomach cancer. And that has a terrible prognosis. So let's prevent it, right? Let's prevent it by diagnosing accurately stomach ulcers and treating them. Because if we can treat them, we can reduce the numbers of deaths of stomach cancer. That's what I want to tell you.
So do the stomach ulcers just come from bad eating habits?
Okay, no. Okay, so look, no. So stomach ulcers, it used to be thought that stress caused stomach ulcers. It doesn't. That bacterium causes stomach ulcers. But if you have stress in your life, what are you putting out from your adrenals? Norepinephrine, cortisol, which is helping, should be helping with tissue repair, but at the same time, what's it doing to your immune system? Suppressing it. So now because you're stressed, your immune system can't cope with what should be normal flora. Because many people have H. pylori in their stomach, but it's not causing them to have stomach ulcers because they have a good immune system. But if you are in constant stress, it affects your immune system, which allows for these bacteria like Helicobacter pylori to cause stomach ulcers. So we want to reduce the stress in our life. We do want to eat right. We don't want to be putting toxins in our stomach that can be, like alcohol goes straight through, can go through the lining of the stomach. Certain medications, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, that they can hurt the stomach lining, right? So there are things, there's behavioral things you can change. There's situational things, but it also has a hereditary component. So if you've ever had somebody in your family with stomach ulcers, if you have, try to change those things you can change. And you might not be able to prevent it, but guess what? We know that those things can lead to them, right? It used to be that they thought that it was really diet, and they really wanted to do. We do know diet has a component, but all of the things have component. Heredity, diet, which is behavior. Is that an easy thing to change?
No.
Stress levels, right? And just a lot of things that we do. And not sleeping enough. Not sleeping enough causes you to be in a fight or flight response, which is doing a terrible thing to your immune system.
So an EGD, that's the only way you can do or diagnose the stomach ulcers. I mean, I hear our older generation always say they had stomach ulcers, but can you really diagnose that you have?
When you say EGD, can you tell me?
Because I can't say it, the thing goes down.
Oh, it's esophageal,
Yep.
Esophageal scope. Yeah, the endoscope. The endoscope. So, no, that isn't the only way. You can do a breath test to tell somebody has ulcers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's this particular one, this particular organism, you will put off a lot of, I don't want to say, oh my God, I just lost what you're putting on. But they can detect it. I want to say, yeah, but that sounds wrong. But anyway, they can just do it from a breath test. Some GI docs can. They'll do that initially, and see, and then they probably will do an endoscopy, right? An endoscopy procedure. But okay, so look, guys, this is just the whole idea of things in your stomach, and like I said, we want to keep, we don't actually have to have food in our stomach for our stomachs to start growling, do we? To get ready. It's getting ready just because you think you might have that lasagna. Or something really good. Something really good. Okay, so now we've had this J-shaped stomach, right? And the caloric sphincter relaxed, and all of that entered into the first part of the small intestine. And here's what I want you to see first. I think it's best from the picture. I think the picture just shows it. You guys, I want you to picture this, because we can do a lot of the rest of this from this picture. What was this thin dome-shaped muscle called? And what was coming through the diaphragm, bringing through the esophagus? And what was this J-shaped organ that they've removed nicely for you so you can see? So remove the stomach. Stomach, y'all. That's what this picture is. Everybody stay with me on this picture. I like these visuals while we're learning because I think it can stick in your head a little better. Now, just underneath, just inferior and dorsal to the stomach is this gland that we see. It's glandular, this gland, and it's the pancreas, isn't it? And it's got a duct that's running through it, and this duct, it looks like it's going to be dumping into this first part of the small intestines, the first part of the small intestines, which is about 22 feet of your GI tract, is the small intestines. This is just the first 8 to 10 inches of it. We also have a duct that's coming from the what? Labeled here. So what is this? The different lobes of the liver, you'll see the right and left lobes, you'll see that they have a duct, and this is this common duct, bile duct, and it looks like it's dumping into here, right? There's a sphincter right here, a sphincter that is keeping this closed when the duodenum, this first part of the small intestines is called the duodenum or the duodenal region. this duodenum, when it's not full, this sphincter's closed because we don't really need secretions coming from the pancreas and the liver unless there's food here, unless we've gotten substances put in here. So it's usually closed. It's not just, these aren't just leaking all 24/7 all the time. This sphincter, this is called the hepatopancreatic sphincter, but you'll never hear it called that. And I don't know why in your book they don't call it what it's called. It's called the sphincter of Oddi, O-D-D-I. It's the sphincter of Oddi is here, and it's going to control what's being released from the liver and what's being released from the pancreas. Fair enough? So what gives the sphincter a signal to relax? What would give it a signal to relax? If it's usually closed, and usually these secretions are kind of backing up along these ducts, what gives it a signal to open is when the duodenum fills. And as it fills, it stretches. And as the duodenum stretches, it releases a couple of hormones, really signaling molecules. One is called CCK. CCK, we call it that because its real name is cholecystokinin. It's easier to say what?
CCK.
Yeah, but that's right, CCK. And the other one is secretin. Secretin. So as soon as the stomach, this caloric sphincter relaxes and the stomach releases stuff into the duodenum, it stretches, which is going to get a signal for CCK and secretin. And what they're going to act on is this sphincter here, and the sphincter is going to relax. And now products from the liver and products from the pancreas can actually enter they can come to the party. Here, so what did I say? Where does most chemical digestion occur? In the where? And where does most absorption occur? Because everything's at the party about it. You get what I'm saying? Everything's there. And so then the soup-like mixture has all the enzymes that are needed, and everything's going to be there. Keep breaking them down, and then hopefully with absorption. Now, let me tell you what's coming. From the liver is something called bile. Bile. So if I ask you where does bile come from, you're going to tell me it comes from where. And if any of you vomited long enough and hard enough, you had this greeny, yellow, caustic kind of secretion that you vomited, and it was bile. It was from your small intestines. It was bile, right up here at the first part of your small intestines, duodenum. So what's the function of bile? Let me tell you what the function of bile is. It's to help you to break down and emulsify, which means that you're going to get them ready for absorption. Fats. Fats. Do we need fats in our diet? Yes. Absolutely. Fats are vital in our diet. 20 to 30% of our caloric intake a day should be fats. Are there good fats and bad fats? Yes. So you would like the good fats. Alexis, did you have a question? Sure. Okay. So bile. Now, what is bile coming from? It's coming from breaking down hemoglobin. Remember, we have every second of our lives, we have red cells that are aging out the system. And we're breaking down the hemoglobin, and that heme part gets broken down to biliverdin, bilirubin, and eventually to bile. Y'all remember that? And now we're saying, gosh, so bile is a byproduct, really, of breaking down hemoglobin, and we use it for absorption of fats. What a great recycling system we are, aren't we? Now, between meals, though, when the sphincter's closed, what would bile be doing? Backing back up. And all of you vomited it before. You know it's a pretty kind of caustic solution, isn't it? So anyway, it's backing up. And that's okay that it's backing up because we have a place to send it for storage. And that's called the what? Gallbladder. And this gallbladder between meals is going to be concentrating the bile but pulling out all of the liquid part of it. And mostly what's in it actually is going to end up being cholesterol. So these cholesterol crystals will form between meals. And then when you have the signal to open up the sphincter, this gallbladder is actually going to be contracting and spitting out those crystals. You know, if those crystals get, and that's natural, that's normal. We're all doing that. We're all forming those cholesterol crystals. We're all getting rid of those. But they should be small. If they're big enough, what do we call them? Gallstones. And if they're big enough gallstones, what can they block? the ducts. And if they block this bile duct, what can it do? It's going to back bile up into the liver, and then it can cause the toxicity to those tissues. It absolutely can.
So when I was 16, I got really sick and I had to get my gallbladder removed.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for me?
So you can live without your gallbladder, but you should have been told that because you don't have a gallbladder, your liver is getting a signal for how this is released,
Right.
and you should really limit fats in your diet. You still need 20%, but they should be the good fats, and it should probably only be about 20%, because you are going to be limited in how much you can do with that. And anything that you put in even before that is going to end up stressing this. So you can live without a gallbladder. Because you were 16 makes me think that you probably have a familial. Do you have anybody?
My grandma and my mom.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody that young, it's usually an inherited factor that's going to do that. Otherwise, other than the inherited one, we think about, and I think I told you all the F's, right? So familial, females are much more likely, but I've known males who have had their gallbladder. 40, which means what has a role? Aging, sense of humor, have a sense of humor. And actually, and this isn't my word, this is just what they say in medicine, the F's of gallbladder is fat. And I shouldn't say that, but anyway, obesity. So pregnancy also, let me say that, pregnancy can sometimes just absolutely do a number on people's gallbladder and cause them to start making stones.
That's when my mom got her gallbladder
Yeah.
when she was pregnant with me.
Yeah, so, but you definitely have a familial component. You have that. All right, so we've got bile, and y'all know it's from the liver. You know what it does. Now look at the pancreas, though. I want you to know this pancreas. We already know the endocrine function of the pancreas. We know it secretes insulin and glucagon. And y'all know that well, like the back of your hand, right? But now we see this duct. Those two were being secreted into the bloodstream. But in this duct, the pancreas has cells that are secreting what are collectively referred to as proteases. So when you hear these proteases, these would be enzymes that break down proteins. These are enzymes that are breaking down proteins. And it actually produces some others, so for even carbohydrates and whatnot. But we really think about the pancreas as producing those enzymes. But let me tell you what else it does. And this is the important thing. This pancreas, look at this little gland. This gland also is secreting into this duct sodium bicarbonate. So sodium bicarbonate, about 1 liter of it a day. And guess what? Because what did you tell me the pH is of all these secretions coming from the stomach? What's the pH? That can't stay like that. Hey, we can't defeat that. So what do we have to do quickly? Get that pH back up to 7. And that's what that bicarbonate's doing. It's getting the pH back up to 7. Hey, if you don't have this happening and you have acid, if you think acid's bad coming back up the esophagus to your mouth, I can promise you it's even worse from the small intestines, right? The lining of the small intestines. So you have got to have that. Can you live without a pancreas? No. Can you live without a liver? No. You can live without a gallbladder because that's a storage sac that is going
There's
to
a
come.
rare case where you can live without a pancreas. I have a cousin who had it removed when he was like 15.
But did he have the entire thing?
That's what they said. He was in another state and had severe pancreatitis.
Yeah, pancreatitis.
Years.
Pancreatitis, hepatitis can both be life-threatening events, and you can see maybe why. I've never heard anybody living without a pancreas, but that doesn't mean, But I wonder if what he did, and sometimes there's mechanical things that they can do. They have done on rare, when was this?
Mid-2000s.
Yeah, I mean,
2005.
I thought in just the last few years they had done a successful transplant, but I didn't know back then. So that'd be so interesting, Megan, if we could hear more about what happened with them, because you don't think about being able to live without it. We all know pancreatic cancer is really deadly, right? You've heard that, and certainly liver cancer as well. The liver is a blood filter, so when there's liver cancer, it's likely that it's already blood. Yeah, that'd be so interesting for us to hear if you can get that information while we're still here. So the pancreas secreting this bicarbonate, which is going to raise the pH back up to 7 quickly. It's going to happen really quickly. The sphincter of Oddi, right, relaxing, allowing the liver and the pancreas to contribute to the party, right? Now everything's in the small intestines. So hopefully by this time. Now let's take a look. Let's take a look at the, what were the two products from the duodenum, the small intestine? What did you say? CCK, cholecystokinin, and secretive. Yeah, so we got those two things we know are from there. So guys, this is actually a good view too, because we kind of like, you know, instead of everything being so compacted, we kind of like eased it out to see really where it's working. So the esophagus, the esophageal sphincter, the cardiac region of the stomach, the fundus, the pyloric region, pyloric sphincter, right? And then this first part of the small intestines, which actually on anatomy looks very different than the rest of the small intestines. But this is the area where we know the liver is contributing, the pancreas is contributing, pH is coming back up. And now everything's kind of at the party. And we have the small intestines. It's very convoluted, isn't it? Very kind of twisted, convoluted. But that means that as the soup is moving through, it's actually like water in your toilet bowl. You know, it's really swirling around. And it means that as those monomers start to be presented by breaking down polymers, they'll come in contact with the inner lining. And the inner lining of the small intestines have microvilli. And what do microvilli do to a cell surface? Microvilli increase the area of the cell surface so that you have time for absorption of those monomer nutrients, right? There's monomer units that are nutrients for you. And it's going to be moving through. I will get you to label the areas of the small intestines. What did we say this is? Duodenum. What the next part, the next whatever feet part is about 8 to 10, jejunum. Say that. Jejunum. And then this very last part is the ileum. This is last part is the ileum. And hopefully by the time, you know, where nutrients are getting here, a lot of it's been absorbed. This has been 22 plus feet. So when we think about this, we understand that also a lot of water's having to be reabsorbed. If it weren't, you would just be a leaking mess, right? So most of the water reabsorption is happening here. Water reabsorption will continue in the large intestines, which we call the colon. We call that the colon. And it will continue. Water reabsorption will continue. But most of the water reabsorption has to happen here. Most absorption of nutrients happen here. Most chemical digestion is happening here before the absorption of nutrients. So we understand a ton is going on here. Any questions? Where this ileum meets the first part, this is the first part of the large intestines. Where it first meets it, this is called the ileocecal junction because this is called the cecum. The cecum. Inferior to the cecum is this little flap of tissue that we really don't think has much function, though it's suggested now that we do think it has function. But in similar species, it has a function for the lymphatic system as part of immunity. But this is, in humans, it's considered a vesical organ, and you can do without it. I mean, an organ that's probably lost its function over time. And this is the appendix, isn't it? If the appendix ruptures, though, let me say this to you guys. Did y'all say the stomach sterilizes your food and drink? No, it does not. There's still bacteria. But as that is moving through, guess what and you've gotten back to a nice 7 pH up here? Guess what the microbes are doing? Oh, cool, we survived that. So now we are going to start to divide, right? So as things are, because some microbes can divide every 10 to 15 minutes. So you go from 1 to 2, 2 to 4. You know, you get what I mean. Logarithmic growth is pretty significant. So by the time this is getting here, there's plenty of microbes. And they're now entering into the large intestines, the colon. The appendix, if it ruptures, what are you spilling into the peritoneal cavity? Which should not be there. That cavity should be sterile. That cavity needs to be sterile. This is why if an appendix ruptures before modern medicine, that was it. Done. Over. Game over. Now, when there's any hint that somebody has appendicitis, any hint that they do, what do they have to do? Go in and take it out. Most appendectomies, which is ectomies, removal of, that always means removal of, doesn't it? Ectomy. Most appendectomies are called, and if you look on the chart, it says incidental appendectomy. And what that means is, it wasn't the appendix, but it was enough of a threaded appendix that they took it out while they were there. And most people don't get told when they have an appendectomy. They get told, oh yeah, you have appendicitis. No, you probably didn't. You probably had these lymph nodes were enlarged and it was hurting like heck, and it could have even caused a fever, and they couldn't risk it. So when they went in, they removed it. An incidental appendectomy. So, and you can't risk it, because these microbes that are in our colon are what finish off our digestive and nutrition process. These microbes are necessary. Your feces, if we were to take all the water out of your feces, your soil cultures, and really look at it, it's mostly microbes, and they're your friends. They have to be there, and they have to be there in certain proportions, and that's what your colon is full of. It's full of those, and they need to be there. If they're not there in the right proportion, you're ill, you're not getting the nutrients that you need, and you're not going to make it all. So your colon has to be filled with bacteria. In your colon, your large intestines, beginning with the cecum, ascending, and I'll get to a picture in a second. This is where you will end up getting electrolytes being pulled back in, water being pulled back in, vitamins being made because of the byproducts of your bacteria that are present, especially E. coli. Have y'all heard of E. coli? Escherichia coli. And so we need all those to finish off that digestive process. Very important things that the colon is doing, the large intestines is doing. And it's mostly doing them because of the bacterial enzymes that are present. Are we good?
If the appendix ruptures, how long? I mean, is it life-threatening within a couple of minutes, or is it like?
Okay, so people have survived ruptured appendix. They have survived. When this is usually happening, you've got clinical presentation. You know, so you've got people who have incredible abdominal pain, like excruciating fever, right? And their pain can be really kind of diagnostic because it's not when somebody's pushing on it, it's when they let it go. So, you know, it really can be, but no, you have times that now we have antibiotics, don't we? And we have irrigation, and we have, you know, you can leave drainage tubes, and we can really attack those now. So no, it's not minutes, but hours make a difference. It can definitely make a difference. Okay. Did I answer that question? What was the question? Okay, all right, so yeah, and now let's go ahead. So we said this, the small intestines, we know these things have quite a function, right? By the way, I'll just tell you this a little bit. With obesity now, and we know that about more than a third of the population, 30+%, you have an insight, is obese, but more than 70% are overweight, right? There's a difference in being overweight and being obese. Obesity means that you're now enough overweight that it's going to shorten your lifespan and adversely affect your quality of life. So that's what obesity means. And so what happens now, and people have had, and we've had this happening long enough that we've got data that support that good things have happened to people who have had some intervention types of procedures, because typically nobody just willy-nilly wants to do an invasive procedure. But there are some gastric bypasses, and there are a lot of different kinds of procedures that can be done. Lap bands can be done. The Y, I think it's what it's called, rope in or something, procedures can be done, where they really, they make the stomach smaller and sort of bypass a lot of this. But what these people need to be very much informed about and made aware of, that they're going to have to be vigilant about getting the nutrients that they need now in other ways than the body would have given them, right? If somebody's had stomach bypass surgery, they're not making intrinsic factor, they better be taken, right? Because their intrinsic factor is being bypassed. So they have to take, you see what I'm saying? So they have to really get, and they supposedly go through, you know, education classes and whatnot to do this. And there are people who are you don't have to lose enough weight so that you fall into the chart. You know, I had a friend tell me that he just, the chart told him he wasn't overweight, he was just too short. You know? So anyway, you don't have to be able to fall into charts, you know, but what you do have to do is just enough weight that, again, it's not, supposedly even a minor weight loss can be so significant to your cardiovascular health and longevity of your life. So, I forgot where that was going, but anyway, the numbers are telling us now. We've been doing this long enough that the numbers support that people are having this done. They're coming off their hypertensive medication. They're coming off their diabetes mellitus medication. They're actually controlling these diseases that are life-shortening diseases, right? So the numbers are supporting that this really is kind of working, and you know. And then we really kind of need to do other things. Here's the thing, I think human evolution has just happened so quickly as far as our industrial world that we take for granted our food sources, right? And because of that, in our lifestyles being so crazy busy and whatever, that's what's contributed to all of this happening. So through education, through whatever, through changes of behavioral practices starting very young, and just knowing about nutrition earlier. You know, I don't know, I know y'all get tired of hearing about me, but honestly, we ate what we had because that's all we had, you know, and it was what, so this is what we ate. And most of what we ate came from farm because when I was younger, because we didn't have, there was no grocery store in Charlotte County when I was growing up. None. In all of Charlotte County. So, you know, things were made from farm. But now it's like just in my lifespan, how quickly things have happened that so much is available to us, isn't it? So I think about it. I think about how hard that is. It's hard for people who have addictions when, like, let's say alcohol. Just use alcohol as an addiction. Because is there an ABC store on every corner? Pretty much. And so that, but think about food and not having good food practices. Food's not on every corner. It's everywhere, right? And a lot of times it's not the right food. So, you know, it's just so many things contributing to it, contributing to this thing that's going on, not just in our country, but in all developed countries. Even developing countries right now are having serious issues with obesity in developing countries because they're getting food products sent in that aren't really nutritious food products. And I want to say this, and then I want you all to just think about it maybe someday. Almost everybody that's overweight, and y'all don't believe me, do your own research. Almost everybody that's overweight is actually nutritionally deficient, meaning you're starving. So their brains are sending signals to eat because the brain is sending signals to eat so that hopefully you get the nutrients you need. Do you know what I'm saying? So I want y'all to think about that the next time you see somebody who's actually morbidly obese. They're starving to death. That's a sad thing, isn't it? Y'all think? Look, I can stand up here and say it's right, but it's really hard to change. Isn't it? It's just hard once you get in habits. What do they say? 3 days to make a habit? 3 days of behavior will create a habit? 3 days will create a habit, but like 3 weeks to change it. So, you know, it's just really hard. All right, so any questions about that slide? I think that I've told you guys what I wanted to. And you see the little microvilli, right? I love this picture of microvilli. This is an actual standing electron micrograph of the inner lining of our small intestines. We knew about peristaltic contractions and segmentation, didn't we? Yep, knew about that. Guys, carbs, cleanest, quickest source of fuel. Y'all remember that? Remember that. Cleanest, quickest source of fuel. We break carbs down for energy. We also break them down for what? We break them down for building blocks for our cells. Remember, we are just our cells working in unison and communicating with each other. To get carbohydrates, the coolest thing about breaking these carbohydrates into their monomer units is that they get directly reabsorbed into our bloodstream. It's a quick kind of process, and that's a good thing. Just remember, we need them for ATP. Cleanest, quickest source of fuel we can get. Proteins, we break down, which I'll say we break them down to. Amino acids, and then those proteins, guess what they do? They end up getting pulled straight across into our bloodstream. Cool deal, right? Straight across into our bloodstream. Fat, what did we need? We needed bio, didn't we? And fats, we say fats are a bad thing or a good thing? They're a good thing. We're pulling them not into our bloodstream. They first go to the lymph. Do y'all know what lymph is? Sure you do. It's that fluid that's bathing our cells. And then lymph enters into the lymphatic vascular system, doesn't it? The lymphatic system. And then lymph eventually gets put back into the where? Bloodstream, right? You don't know, all lymph gets returned back to the bloodstream. Yeah, so fats are a little bit different. Fats are a little bit different than carbs and proteins. All right, so anyway, water balance. Did I tell you where does most reabsorption of water occur? Small intestines, and then the rest of it reoccurs where? Large intestines. If you have too much water not being reabsorbed, it's staying in the system. That's like flushing. And so what are you going to have? You're going to have diarrhea. If too much water is staying in that tract, you're going to have diarrhea. If you're not having enough absorption in the small intestines and large intestines. If you have too much absorption happening, what are you going to have? Constipation. That's exactly right. All right, so now let's look at this large intestines. Have we removed the small intestines? Yeah, so now we've removed the small intestines. We know this is the last part of the small intestines, the ileum right here. So now this is legitimately feces and what we call feces, and most of the undigested larger particles are going to remain, but we're still absorbing nutrients in the colon, the large intestines. The reason that they're called large intestines, they're a lot shorter than the small intestines, only 5 to 6 feet or so. But the reason we call them larger is because their lumens are bigger. You know, the inside is a larger area. This is a muscular tract, just like the rest of it is. And these units of muscles are called haustral units or haustrum, or haustral units. So what happens is, again, this major contraction that's happening, and feces has to move up. And because of it, it's called the ascending colon. The cecum, the appendix, the ascending. Now feces has to go across. So what do you think that's called? Transverse colon. And then it has to come down, descending. And then it makes this S-shaped move here, and that's called the sigmoid colon. Have you heard of a sigmoidoscopy before? Well, so now you have. So a sigmoidoscopy was where they're going in here just looking at this region. A colonoscopy means that they're looking where? Kind of all throughout, aren't they? They're looking all throughout. They're making sure that the lining looks healthy, that there aren't any polyps. What's a polyp? It's not necessarily precancerous. You can have polyps that are benign and forever. You can have them in your nose. You can have them in a lot of places. But in your colon, what they are outgrowths from the tissue here. So they're like little tags, if you will. Okay. So what they'll do is they'll biopsy them for sure. You know, they'll biopsy and make sure they're okay. But a lot of times they're okay. You're more okay than not, right? So polyps are. But you can also, when they do a colonoscopy and they're looking here, you can have diverticuli. What are they? They can lead to what you just said? No, if they're inflamed, that's called diverticulitis. That's called diverticulitis. If you have that condition, it's called diverticulosis, right? So anyway, but diverticuli, what are they? Instead of there being little growths like polyps, these are outpocketings where the muscle is weakened. So now you've got this little outpocketing. And so as feces moves through, can stuff stay in there? Yeah. And that little outpocketing. And can that little outpocketing get inflamed? And it can. And if it ruptured, what did I tell you would be leaked into the peritoneal cavity? That should be sterile. Is that, but not just feces, what's in it? Bacteria, microbes. And so this is going to cause peritonitis, and this is life-threatening. So anyway, but we have ways to treat, but some events aren't good, and they don't make it. right? So if somebody has those, they'll find out about it. So they're gonna not eat things that have like seeds and things like that, because can those things get in there and cause incredible irritation, get stuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, they really can. All right, what else? I don't know. You know, colonoscopies. So anyway, that gets done, and I think the recommendation now has changed. If you think people, and again, it's because of our evolved lifestyles and our evolved diets, which aren't what they need to be. So now they've changed the regulations about people being recommended to have colonoscopies every 10 years. It used to be after the age of 50, but now it's the age of what? 40. They just pushed that down a decade. Because here's the good news about colon cancer, if you're looking for good news. The good news is it's almost always curable if it's caught early. If it's caught early, it's almost always curable. This is, you know, people think there's no cure for cancer. They're hiding that truth. No, nobody's doing that. You know, there's so many different kinds of cancers, and it depends on when you catch them. And there are a lot of cancers that we can cure. A lot. So that's one of them, but it has to be early, and people have to be kind of proactive. So now in the sigmoid colon, and this is the rectal vault. I like that word, vault. I didn't make that up. That's actually what's called. Anyway, and as this stretches out, it sends a signal that you've got something in the rectal vault. So you get a signal to do what? Defecate. And so this is the anus, and you see this you've got like a little internal sphincter and an external sphincter, and you usually get control of defecating by the age of 2, or, you know, certainly by 4. If it's much later than 4, then people usually are going to try to figure out if there's an anatomical, physiological, psychological reason that somebody is not having control of that, right? So they'll look at all of those things after about the age of 4. All right, how about that? Y'all good? How are you feeling? How are you feeling about that 30-foot track? Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I appreciate y'all. Now that's in your disorders, but I do want to talk about those types of things. So thanks for that question. So Crohn's disease is an autoimmune disease. It means that you have this hyped up, jacked up immune response that is causing an inflammatory type of situation. And Crohn's disease occurs not just in the colon, but also it can be in the small intestine, and on rare cases, it can be anywhere in the 30-foot tract. So you've got these heightened inflammatory, and now it's the inflammation that is causing the problems, because it can lead to ulcers, it can lead to bleeding, it can lead to fistulas actually forming, which are tunnels between one area of an organ to another, you know, surrounding tissues. So people can have like rectal fissures, fistulas and fissures that painful, more of a chance of having like sepsis, because, you know, obviously problems with that. So Crohn's disease is really, it's a really difficult disease for people to manage. And some people with Crohn's disease, just like a lot of autoimmune diseases, some people, I think of autoimmune diseases, almost all of them, even though they only talk about a few of them like this, but I think of almost all of them as diseases of thirds. Like about a third of people with Crohn's disease will manage it pretty well. And, you know, we'll definitely have a lifestyle change, and we'll definitely have some issues, but we'll manage it pretty well. About a third of them will have serious lifestyle changes because of it, and serious procedures because of it, and serious, you know, invasive type of things that are going to have to happen. And then you're going to have about a third that are going to have short lifespans because of it. And sometimes, you know, devastating kind of consequences because of it, like losing their colon and having to have bags, you know. So I really do think about autoimmune diseases as being like that, because especially those types. But, you know, like even MS and lupus and a lot of those diseases being that. Because these diseases is that person's own immune system and how it's responding, and trying to get control on that person's immune system. And you can have two people who look like you look at them and their demographics look like they should be responding the same way, but they won't. You know, they have the same environmental upbringing, they have the same daily routine, they're got the same age, same gender, same things, but they'll respond just completely differently. It's their own immune system. So that's Crohn's. Now, ulcerative colitis. Ulcerative colitis is going to be just in the colon. So, and then IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. That's when you're not getting the right signals. I told you that you swallow food, and should you have to think about it until this actually swells here because something's entering it? You shouldn't have to think about it. Everything is part of your autonomic nervous system sending this along. But in irritable bowel syndrome, that's kind of not happening. You're getting these false signals. And so what happens is and it can cause incontinence. Like you don't have time. You don't have time to think about that you need to go. You got to go like you're going right now. And there might not be any real reason that this is happening. So you're getting these, it's just weird signaling. So, has anybody talked to a GI recently or known anybody who's had this and they've been recommended to do certain things? Some of the diets that are for IBS, ulcerative colitis, and also even Crohn's, some of the diets seem to be kind of the same. What'd you say? But would you thank you, FODMAP.
Oh, I just heard of it. I don't know where you just.
Okay, look, I actually, do y'all mind? Let's look that up real quick because I knew it was called that, but I was hoping somebody was going to know what it stood for. Oops, not
So while you're looking that up, it says in the book that the Crohn's is hereditary. Did you say it is an autoimmune?
All right, it's an autoimmune disease that has we think, a hereditary component. Okay. All right, look, let me tell y'all this. We think almost everything has a what? Hereditary. Yes, but you should understand that this is an immune thing. This is what we think is an immune thing. It's actually a lot of information just coming out right now about Crohn's. You know how we know that type 1 diabetes, that 10% of diabetes mellitus, type 1 is an autoimmune? You remember? That's autoimmune too, where your own immune system attacks the beta islet cells of the pancreas. It's actually, they're actually really targeting down and knowing which viral infection, and we think about little kids developing this up to the early 20s, you have, that didn't even cause you to be sick, but your immune system made antibodies that interacted with the beta islet cells in the pancreas and destroyed them. Because antibodies do target specific antigens, don't they? So we know it's this cross reaction that causes that autoimmune disease. We're thinking Crohn's is too now, that there is this cross reaction that happens from something that you encounter that causes you to end up forming or end up having this disease. Now, there's almost a hereditary component for anything that we've ever seen. And environmental, and what. But you should kind of know it's considered normal. And there are people that end up having these that, does this look like a good site? I always don't know what to click on.
Go to the
first one? This one?
Yeah.
All right. Sometimes if you look at the URLs, it just looks like a crazy site. They just want you to jump on it and then pay for something to get the information. Okay, so where's the list?
Go down and
Keep
it's
going.
just like pink.
So
right there.
that's to avoid.
Things to avoid. Oh God, see, thank you for seeing that.
Which you can have down.
Gosh, well, you got to avoid, what? Is that still
You
the list
gotta
to avoid?
everything
Yes.
with wheat and anything with gluten. You have to avoid all gluten foods.
Good to eat food.
But you're limited.
Oh, you have got to be kidding me. Okay, look at this.
Like beans.
You can eat a pumpkin though.
Okay, so they
You
tell,
can eat zucchini, but you can't have seeds, right? I mean, zucchini has seeds, right?
Yes, it does.
Blueberries. Okay.
this is so funny because I thought like we're eating kangaroo. I thought that red meats were, that's funny about beef, because I thought that you were supposed to avoid red meats too.
Probably in moderation.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it has a lot to do with
oh, okay, I'm happier now.
Maybe I'm wrong.
But you have to have a wheat-free one,
Okay. Okay.
and they're no good.
Interesting.
Look, you can have alcohol.
But it says
Oh, it's an
irritant.
irritant, so that makes, so that, okay, so what?
Maybe
Why did it
it's
even have that
still-
on there?
Digestive stuff.
Okay. Anyway, just how hard is that, right? That's just so hard. Okay. All right. So guys, FODMAP though, so people should know this. What did it stand for? Did we ever see? No. So what does FODMAP stand for? That's one of the reasons. Does anybody see?
Over there on the side where it says FODMAP with Wikipedia,
Fermented.
scroll over
Yeah,
to it
scroll.
on the bottom. Yeah. It's an acronym.
Fermentable oligodimonosaccharides and polyos. Oh yeah, like we're gonna remember that. Okay, FODMAP.
That's what they have FODMAP.
Fermentable oligodimonosaccharides and polyols.
Short
They are
chain
short chain
carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, it's all right.
You know, can I just say what, Nicole, thank you for bringing that up, because, you know, people will say it's just as inexpensive to eat healthy as not. They're lying. That's a lie. Because it is much less expensive. Fresh foods there's so much waste in fresh foods because they go bad quickly, so you end up having a lot of kind of waste with them. But like the things that have preservatives and you can buy big stock of, you know, so people who say that are just being so disingenuous, and I wish they would stop saying that, because it is not true. Until you can get a 99-cent salad instead of that 99-cent Happy Meal, you know, that you get, that they just need to stop saying that, because it is actually not true. So what it really does take is crazy planning, doesn't it? Absolutely. It takes like crazy planning. But even if it's crazy planning time, it means you also have to be able to get to the fresh food sources so frequently, which is again money, transportation, time. So it's disingenuous to say it's just as, and I hear it from professionals a lot, that they say, no, it's just as easy and just as cheap to eat fresh. It's not, unless you live
paid
on a
well
farm.
enough.
Huh?
That's because they're getting paid well enough to be able to go and do that easily.
Well, I think they're just, I don't think anybody's intentionally trying to be misinforming. I think that they think that, you know, it can happen and you get, but no, they need to, that's not true. All right, so guys, this chapter actually is, there's nothing new in this chapter, but there are a couple of things I'll show you. I think they're, you know, whatever. But there's nothing new. What did we call having glucose and oxygen with an arrow, giving the cells giving off carbon dioxide and water? What equation do we call that? Cellular respiration, aerobic respiration. And we said this is our best way to get a ton of what? So this is not new to you. Do y'all see this? And we know carbs are our cleanest, quickest source, but can we use fats for energy? We can use fats for energy. We can bring fats into this Krebs cycle here, which is the second step. So we can avoid this and use fats to do this. But when we do, what will be giving off? Ketones, which will affect our pH, which we then have to correct. You know, so it's going to be a little bit, but it's a good source of energy. Fats are too, if we run out of carbohydrates or glycogen or whatever. Can we break down proteins and bring into this? We can, but we shouldn't, because if we do, again, we're going to have byproducts. But mostly, if we're using our proteins for energy, our cells are protein factory. We're starving. We're cannibalizing ourselves if that's the case. And so we really should not be doing that. Body weight. This is old, and this is in your most updated text, but it's kind of wrong right now. Is anybody thinking about going into nutrition and being a nutritionist? No. Okay, so, well, you all need to be, because if you're in medicine, you need to become a nutritionist. But so much is, and I say that, and I should know more about it. I should say it more. Every single day, now, this is a new science. It's almost like it's a brand new science. And only doctors and nurses and anybody in medicine need one class, one 4-credit class, not even 3 credits, in nutrition. That's all you need. And that's just really probably wrong, because we really are learning so much now about nutrition and understanding. Like these slides, some of these slides are wrong. We already know it. And so this book's only a couple of years old. The print's already old. It used to be thought calories in, calories out. And you know, that one food pyramid was right. It's wrong. We know 13 different types of food pyramids for different types of people. Their ethnicity plays a role, and this is inheritance. Their ethnicity plays a role. Their blood type can play a role in how things are processed. There are so many components, so many different things are playing a role in this. So we know this isn't even still true. It's not even calories in and calories out, which doesn't actually at a chemical level make sense, but it really kind of does. Some people can take in just very low calories, less than 1,000 calories a day, and be gaining weight. And we know that they should be expending more calories than that, but there's just stocking them and storing them and changing the chemicals. In our bodies, we can actually change carbs that we eat when we break them down. We can change them into fats. So, you know, it's not exactly like this. I do want to let you all know that when we think about appetite and satiety centers, so, you know, if you satiate means you have had enough. You know, it's how you know that you've had enough as far as like portion control and all of that stuff. This is actually in the hypothalamus region. So they show a little thing of a cat. So when there are lesions on this medial toward the midline, then there's this ferocious appetite. When there are lesions on the lateral area, then there can be this loss of appetite. But anyway, we know it's from the hypothalamus, and that's where the satiety centers actually come from. That's for everything. That's for food. That's for drink. That's for sex. That's for anything. It's where these centers actually are located. Now, nutrients, I just want a basic definition to remind you of. A nutrient is anything that can be used, chemical, that can be used for growth, repair, maintenance. And certainly we had our 4 organic categories, didn't we? But don't we also have inorganic things we need, like water is inorganic, but God, that's absolutely necessary. If you can't live long without water, can you? You know, the saying goes, and we always hear people who survive like 7 days under an earthquake, rubble, and you know, we hear about people like that. But usually they've had a drip of water from somewhere, or they've been drinking their own urine, or they've been doing something, right? But we usually think about 3 days. Without water, you're done. So water is honestly vital. We can last a lot longer without food because we usually have some reserves, some fat reserves or whatnot. But there are other things, minerals and vitamins. So let me tell you this, as far as calling something essential, an essential nutrient, all of them are essential the way you use that term outside of nutrition. But you need to understand it when you hear the term essential nutrient in nutrition. It means that your body cannot make this. You best take it in something that you're eating. So like of the 20 amino acids that we need to build our proteins, we can make 12 of them as long as we have building blocks. But 8 of them we can. So those 8 are called what? But aren't all 20 essential? Yes, they are. It's just that we can make them. So that's how that word's used. And that's like a test question that they love to ask you about on these things, but just make sure that's how that word's used in nutrition. There's something called recommended daily allowances, and I don't even want you to look at them because they're all different now. They're all of them different now, and depending on the person, they're different, right? But you should have a general idea. How many of you look at your labels, your food labels? Just there's quite a few of you good. So you're looking at your food labels and you're knowing, you know, there's a certain number of carbs you would like to be taking in. Of those carbs, the fiber part of the carb, you want to get enough fiber, right? Which is part of the carbs. You're looking at your lipids and you're looking at your proteins and trying to get those in. But it's really different for a lot of different people. So some of these slides will tell you the RDAs of those, but I don't want you to memorize any of those. Carbohydrates, though, you must take. And there are these fat diets that are carb-free diets. And the ketone diet isn't a carb-free diet, but it is, a lot of people are doing the keto diet, aren't they? Is anybody doing the keto diet? You are doing keto diet? Okay. So a lot of people, this is like you know what the keto diet kind of is? It's really a, you know, the Mediterranean diet they talk about? That's really kind of like the keto diet. But you've got to have carbohydrates. You must. Because if you don't have carbohydrates, there's two types of cells in your body that can only use carbohydrates, neurons and red blood cells. So even those some extreme diets that tell you not to do carbs, the chemistry of that's absolutely true. Because as soon as you run out of glycogen, which is usually within 12 hours, you're going to start burning fats, and it's going to be quick. It's going to come off quick, and you know, okay, I can see that result. But the fact is, you've got two types of cells in your body that are going to be struggling. So you better quickly, and usually they advise, only be on this low carb amount for this amount of period, and then go back adding carbs too. But the Mediterranean diet is that, you know, y'all can look it up. But that seems to be, if you had to pick one thing that would be best for everybody, all those 13 plus different things, it would be that diet. Best for cardiovascular, best for all of those things, which really is kind of like the sensible keto diets. But I don't do it. So, but anyway, but I have read about it, and the chemistry of it makes perfect sense. So the chemistry really does. I do want you to know that you do have to have enough fiber. If you're not getting enough fiber, you're going to be, you know, you can be having too many of the bad even lipids. It plays a role in how you actually even absorb lipids, which are fats. When we hear about good fats and bad fats, we understand, we hear about total cholesterol, don't we? A total cholesterol number, it's worthless unless you know the LDL portion and the HDL. One of my students one time told me they remembered the HDL is the good because H is for happy. So the HDL number you want to be high, the biggest proportion of your total cholesterol, and you want your LDL number to be low. The HDL number is usually based on inheritance, but it can also be influenced by lifestyle. Smoking reduces your HDL. A sedentary lifestyle where you're not moving much reduces your HDL levels. Not having enough certain types of carbs and fibers can increase your LDLs. Not sleeping well reduces your HDL. So see, there are things you can do, even though we kind of think of HDL as being an inherited thing, that you can do to try to increase that, right? All right. Women and men have different types of fat percentage, so y'all are going to be able to, y'all didn't do that the other day, did you? But I'm going to have that again. We all can, and I'll show you how to do that thing while we're doing this section of our racks. But you can check. Women can have anywhere from 20 to 30% of their body index is fat, and that's normal. That's going to be normal. Men are usually 10 to 20%. Women have higher fat concentrations because of our hormones that we have that help us store this, and you know, that which kind of makes sense too, because it's the women that carry the gestational periods, right? And then also lactating, that requires a lot more energy during that time. So anyway, our intake should be less than 30%, but needs to be about 20%, or you're going to end up being deficient in some of those vitamins. Y'all have heard of fat-soluble vitamins, haven't you? Have you heard of fat-soluble vitamins? Oh, and that was one thing I wanted to tell you about right back there too. Anyway, I don't know where it is. But so what that means is if you don't have enough fat, you're going to be deficient in those particular vitamins. Now I forgot what I was going to do from the other thing. So you have to have enough fats for that. And here's where this looks like talking about this. And you would just want to make sure that you have enough. I'll think about it in a minute. Okay. So HDL, LDL, total cholesterol. Proteins, we know we're protein factories, aren't we? Our cells are protein factories. This is the most diverse group of organic molecules that our cells make. We have got to bring in, especially the essential amino acids. We're usually able to make the most of the others. But think about antibodies, hormones, myoglobin that's storing oxygen, hemoglobin carrying oxygen for our cells. So many, 2,000 enzymes that are making things happen at a crazy pace. We just talked about enzymes today, didn't we? Yeah, so just so many of these things that are that are necessary. We talked about albumin, didn't we? And clotting proteins and factors and complement proteins. So we just are always talking about these proteins that we make, and we've got to have enough of those in. I think those of you that read labels, I think that can be some of the hardest things to get in, protein. Do y'all feel like that? Or is it just me that loves carbs? Okay, but truly, I think we're Americans are very deficient. And the thing about proteins, if you are eating proteins, typically it causes you to be less hungry. So, but anyway, so proteins and fiber, those are the two things that I think that most people think that, especially Americans, are not getting at the levels that they probably need. So anytime you eat this, you should have something with protein in it. Now, I don't ask you questions about the different types of diets, no vegan, and all this, so I don't ask you that, but obviously people use different diets. This is just, all of this is just that equation again. See, the glucose plus oxygen giving us ATP. So see, this is just another type of picture that that person was on aerobic respiration. We can go into some of our cells, not all, our cardiac cells can't, but we can go into anaerobic fermentation for a little bit of time and get a little bit of energy, but we cannot stay in it long. And when we are in it, it's going to give a byproduct of lactic acid that we're then going to have to deal with. So I don't ask you that, I just want you to know, this is why you need to be breathing, so that you don't have to go into without air. You have aerobic respiration, you have air. And again, all kinds of slides that just take you through that formula again. You see what I mean about nothing really being new in here? Yeah. I think it's actually a good one to just look over just because you know, it sort of reiterates things. Lipids, we've got to have enough lipids. Ketones, we know about ketoacidosis. What else? I don't really, metabolic rate, does it always stay the same, or can things influence it? Obviously, it doesn't stay the same. Sometimes we don't need to be, all whatever. So sometimes it slows down, sometimes it goes back up. Things that affect it. Pregnancy. Actually, eating affects it. And this is an interesting thing, and this is why people should not voluntarily starve themselves. Because when you are, your body sends a signal to stop your metabolism and store every calorie. So metabolism was described to me, and I may have shared this with y'all in AMP1, but metabolism, a student shared this with me about her, I think it was her grandfather, she told me, who worked in a research lab, wherever, but he talked about metabolism as being like a furnace. And it is like a furnace. So if you are feeding it, it will roar. If you're feeding it just the right, fuels, it will roar. But if you smother it, like if you put, even if they seem like good fuels, but you put too much in, it will bank it down and slow it down. So I thought that was just an interesting kind of analogy because it is absolutely true at a chemical level. So this is why you need to be routinely feeding your furnaces the right things, the right amounts. Such a hypocrite. But not over eating in one meal or whatever, because what it does is just actually snuff out your metabolism. Pregnancy, anxiety, fever, eating, all these things play a role. We said if you're anxious, some people are anxious eaters, some people they don't eat when they're anxious. But if you're anxious or you're feeling stressed, you hold that 30-foot tract that is requiring a ton of the autonomic system working is not getting the signals that it needs to really do what it needs to be doing. So it's probably the time to looking when that's happening. Thermoregulation. So body temperature, maintaining body temperature. That's going to be important, isn't it? So hypothermia, can we live if we stay in hypothermia too long? And same thing with hyperthermia. We can't do that either. So fever for too long is going to end up interrupting our protein metabolism and whatnot, and it's just going to end up getting sometimes into a positive feedback. Was anything new in this? So that's why it kind of sounded like I was flying through it, but I don't think anything was really new. So what I'd like for you guys to be able to do, would y'all like to get a bite to eat, speaking of food? No, before we dissect rats?
No.
Can I please have at least 10 minutes? Can I have 10 minutes? Can we just say 12? Because at 12 o'clock noon, I'll see y'all all in there, okay? And we're gonna dissect rats and do your little body fat index thing. On this body fat index thing, there's a chart that you'll see. It's an easy thing to do. You program in your height, your weight, your gender, your age, you program it all in. You can't lie to it, because by the way, nobody's going to be looking at it but you. Okay, so don't tell it a lie. I have a medical grade scale, and I think if you don't know your exact height, like a quarter of an inch, and a medical grade scale in this little storage room area here. You can go in there and get your weight and height. You feed all the information in, and then it only takes like seconds to actually get your percent body fat and your BMI. So, which is the bottom number. So y'all can do that today, you know, while you're taking breaks in between or whatever. Okay, so 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 12. All right, so good.